You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Haunted Histories with your host Penny G. Morgan, right here on Parasearch Radio.
Hello everybody, and a very warm Wednesday welcome to you all. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you're all well. Well, we're going to get on with the show about Bobb Mackeys very shortly, sorry. But before I do, just a couple of things to mention. Who's been listening to the other shows that we've had on this week? There's been some really interesting ones on. You've had out-of-body experiences yesterday with the Paranormal Concept crew. You had the lovely Vicky from Dead Central, Haunted Magazine, amongst others, on Monday with the Supernatural Girls. And on Sunday you had our beautiful Kerry talking to Madame MJ Dixon from Sage Paracon. And what a good time was had by all on those shows, I think. And tonight you have me talking about Bobb Mackeys on Haunted Histories. Aren't you lucky, the shows we're putting out for you at the moment. Now, I will be checking this, but has everyone clicked like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel? Get those subscriber numbers up. The more numbers we get, the more content we can put on there for you. Go click if you haven't already. And what else? Oh yes, we've got a little competition to announce the results of, haven't we? Now, if you're not listening to this, the person who wins, then someone's going to have to tell you. But I've put all the names into a random number generator, and the winner is Mr. Craig Maloney. Well done, Craig. We'll be messaging you a bit later to get your contact address from you so that Paul from Haunted Magazine can send you over those 4 copies of the magazine. So well done, Mr. Craig Maloney. So, I think without further ado, because I know a lot of you are interested in hearing all about Bobb Mackeys. Well, I hope you are. Because I went through hell recording this show for you this week. As you can probably hear, I'm still a bit croaky now. I've got my drink sitting there just in case I start coughing inexplicably down the phone. But anyway, here you go. And we've got a slight change to the guest tonight, because the guest who was going to join us unfortunately couldn't make it. But I think we've actually, who was it who said that why go out for hamburger when I've got steak at home? I think it was Paul Newman who said it about his wife. Well, I've got steak for your guest. I've got someone who actually runs tours around Bobb Mackeys. I've got Angela Tibbets-Johnson. Hi, Angela.
Hi, guys. Hello,
I bet you've
Penny.
never been compared to steak, have you?
I have not. Filet mignon's my favorite, so.
You're my filet mignon of a guest, yes.
That's right.
Now, you've got a lot of connections with Bobb Mackeys, haven't you?
I do, yeah. I co-founder of Gatekeeper Paranormal, and we host all the private investigations and tours for Bobb Mackeys.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we're considered.
How long have you been doing that for? How long have you been doing the tours?
We've been doing tours probably, I think it's been a little over 5 years now.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so we're there quite often, pretty much every night, except for Friday and Saturday.
Yeah. So you'd say you know the place pretty darned well.
I do, yeah. I'm there quite often. As a matter of fact, I have a tour this evening, so.
Nice. So, what came first for you? Was it the interest in the paranormal, or was it the opportunity to look after Bobb Mackeys from a tour perspective?
Definitely an interest in paranormal.
Right.
I can remember just as young as 3 years old, with my first experience and what I would now think would be some sort of a spirit that I encountered. And then, of course, that just stayed with me all through my childhood, through my teenage years, and then into my early 20s. Yeah. I just kind of started to do my own little investigations and, some of the locations that, urban legends and things like that. And then, of course, it just progressed and started my own group. And then here we are with Bobb Mackeys.
Okay. And you live quite close to the place.
I do,
well?
yeah. Yeah, just about 20 minutes away.
Okay, which I guess in American terms is close.
Yes, it's probably, I would say maybe 10 miles.
Okay.
10, 15 miles.
So, in the UK, and I mean, I have people who listen to this podcast from all over the world, Australia, America, the UK. But in the UK, our main knowledge of Bobb Mackeys is on things like ghost adventures and those kind of things.
Yes.
Now, when I watch programs like Ghost Adventures, they're fascinating, but I have learnt to take some of what they discover with a pinch of salt, because it can get a bit too dramatic, and also, you're seeing 45 minutes at what could be 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 hours, if not more, of film time.
Right.
But one of the things that I have picked up, before we start talking about the history of Bobb Mackeys and the site and everything else, one of the things that I've picked up, and I was telling you this off air, it's a bit of a Marmite place. People seem to either love it or hate it. When I put up on Facebook, I was looking for a guest, I got people saying, I wouldn't spend my money there, it's pointless, nothing ever happens, it's just all publicity to get people through the door. But then I get the other people saying, oh my God, it's the most active place I've ever been to, do not upset the spirits there, they're nasty, it's a gateway to hell, and all that kind of thing, but nothing in between. There's no sign. Well, I think there might be something there, but I'm not 100% sure. It's either it's amazing, it's mega active, you've got to be really careful it's pointless going there.
Yes, yeah. We do get that quite often. And I'll be honest with you, there are nights that it is very quiet. You don't see things, you do not hear things, and you would get that impression that there is absolutely nothing here. Yeah. But then the building takes on a whole other atmosphere on other nights, to where I could even just walk through the front door and I can immediately get that vibe that I am not walking in here alone. I'm going to step outside and I'm going to wait for my group so that I don't go in, alone. Yeah. So yeah, it's there. It's hard to find that in between. Again, the nights that it is active, it can be very volatile. Right. Yeah, it's a very unique building.
Okay. So have you noticed any when it is in its volatile, active mood? Have you noticed any common denominators, or can you really not see any parallels whatsoever?
We have not really been able to find a cause or a reason why, some nights are more active than others. And we've even, done some research on, is there a specific personality type that maybe these spirits are drawn to? And there's really no rhyme or reason that we can see. We have people that are there provoking. Yeah. And then we have people that are there that are just spectators and are just watching, and they're very quiet and observing. Those people have experienced, physical things, scratches and bite marks and things like that. So it's just bizarre on how these spirits are trying to interact and communicate with, people that come through.
Yeah, because if we start to look at the history, the place itself, I mean, when you go onto Wikipedia, they say it's promoted in popular culture as the most haunted nightclub in America. And even when I did searches on Kentucky as a place, one of the first things that comes up is Bobb Mackeys as being synonymous with Kentucky, which is pretty good publicity for the place,
right.
if I'm
sure.
honest.
Right.
Now, I've found newspaper reports saying about the fact that the site before the club was built was an old slaughterhouse, but then I've also found reports saying no, that was Bobb Mackeys saying that to try and make it seem scarier than it actually was.
Well, I wouldn't say that it was Bobby himself, trying to make up stories. I wouldn't say that at all. In fact, I think Bobby has, been told many different stories through the years as well. From the research that we have done, we have found that there was a slaughterhouse close by. But we don't think that it was actually located on the actual property there. Right. There was actually a distillery that was located, a very large distillery, one of the largest in Kentucky of that time. And, of course, with that distillery, there were 3 wells that were located within that building. And, of course, those wells would flow out to the river right behind the building.
Is that the Licking?
The Licking River, yes. Yeah. In the basement, of course, that the distillery building is long gone. It had been torn down. I believe, if I remember correctly, it may have actually have blown up at some point. Parts of it. And so underneath in the basement, there is an older, some type of an older building that's attached inside the basement, and that was actually the home of, I believe, one of the gentlemen who owned the distillery, and he lived there in that building. It's quite old, and in that building there is one of the wells. Right. And so there's been many different stories through the years, but some of that again is urban legend, and then of course there's the facts, which we've spent quite a lot of time, trying to research and find the root of all of these urban legends.
Oh, you're a woman after my own heart. You really are. You really are. If you saw how much reading I do when I'm researching one of these shows to try and find newspaper articles or census or, something that then ties in with something else. And it gets quite addictive after a while.
Right.
It does. Looking at history from the late 1800s, it's plausible there could have been a makeshift slaughterhouse there. That is quite plausible because there was no real regulation. There was no sort of... And if you had a group of people living there who needed their animals slaughtering...
Sure.
It's not like regulated abattoirs like we would have now.
Right.
But it's interesting you say it was a distillery more rather than there's sort of signs, because one of the main parts that the television programs like to focus on is what they say was the old slaughterhouse with the well or the portal gateway to hell, as they like to call it, in that is meant to lead down to the river. Out of interest, what experiences have you had in that part of the building? Because that seems to be one they always like to go on about, is the ultimate in evil, and people get possessed there, and all those kind of things.
Right. Well, so the basement does it has its very own unique atmosphere. But I find, for myself, more activity upstairs in the main part of the bar than I do in the basement. Now, that's myself. That's my personal experiences. Yeah. However, I have bore witness to people who have had bite marks appear on their body, scratches appear on their body just out of nowhere. Again, some of them may have been provoking. Some of them, again, were just very quiet and observing and listening. And it's very bizarre. But yeah, the whole building can take on a whole new atmosphere. But I find more activity upstairs for myself as personal experience.
Well, we'll talk about the main bar area and upstairs and everything in a second. But if we go back to one of the urban myths that's associated with those wells, runoff holes, whatever they actually were, Pearl Bryan, the murder that's associated with the place, which I have to say, all the research I've done into it, I think is hokum, that she should be haunting that place. But there you go.
That's true.
Her head was thrown down one of those wells because supposedly one of her two, well, it was supposed to be both of her two murderers, were involved in satanic rituals in where the slaughterhouse had been. And this is one of the urban myths. The minute you put in Mackeys, that comes up. And I have been talking to someone who's investigated into it a lot, and she's of the same opinion as me, that maybe there was satanic rituals going on there. We don't know, but the likelihood that her head was thrown down and it went into the river is quite remote.
Correct. That is correct. Yes. My theory, or our theory, Gatekeeper Paranormal's theory, is that again, Pearl actually was not ever inside that building. The only link that we can find between Pearl and this building is that the road that runs along next to Bobb Mackeys would have been the route that Pearl had to have taken to go to the area in which she died.
Yeah, Fort Thomas.
Yes, yes. That is the only link that we can think of. Right. Again, the head was never found, so there is no proof that the head was ever put into the well. And of course, if it was, it would have flowed out to the river, and of course then washed away.
They dragged the river because that was one of the places they looked.
Right,
they did
exactly.
Actually look for the head. They dragged it quite copiously, I believe.
Right, exactly. So again, I do not think that there's any kind of relation there between Pearl and the actual building itself.
Okay, that's interesting, because that's kind of the conclusion I came to just doing paper research on it. So it's interesting to hear someone who knows the building well is saying the same thing. Okay, so these bites and scratches and things that people get in this area, do you think it is something nasty, or do you think it's something that's really irritated that nobody's listening and it's getting more and more forceful? Demonic is a very strong word. I do not believe that whatever is there is demonic. I do not believe that. Yeah. I do believe that whatever is there, it is just, it's very nasty, very angry, irritated, and then of course is just acting out in a manner to, either get attention or to, scare people away. Yeah. I can imagine how frustrating it would be to be kind of stuck in a parallel plane where you maybe can't move on, and you're maybe trying to communicate with the living, and they can't see you, they can't hear you, or you're just simply frustrated and kind of quite angry that they're disturbing you. A bit like me when my son wakes me up at 6:30 in the morning when I'm asleep. No, seriously, I don't want to hurt him, but I might yell at him or accidentally lash out when I'm half asleep because I'm annoyed.
Right, very annoyed. Yeah. So demonic is a very strong word. I do not feel anything demonic there.
Okay.
But there's something very, very nasty and very angry, though.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it is just nasty or if it is just annoyed and it's just got to the end of its tether.
Sure.
Yeah,
right.
Because so many people have been going in there for the last... How many years have people been investigating down there?
So, of course, when the Ghost Adventure show came out, that really increased the popularity.
Yeah.
And that's when things, I think, really took off as far as any kind of, publicity. But there has been reports, even back into the 80s, 70s and 80s that this place was haunted. Bobby and his wife, first wife, Janet, who is now deceased, they had, taken part of many television talk shows, even in the 80s, as early as the 80s, discussing this, the hauntings there, the things going on. So, it's been going on for a while, but things have just kind of escalated, since the shows and, took interest.
Yeah. See, it's when I hear these stories about things that are scratching people and biting, pulling hair and all of that. I just wonder if it is just, it's something that can't communicate, and it's getting to the stage where it's getting so irritated that it can't, because it could be saying, please just leave me alone, I'm tired, I want to be alone, and you're still here, you're still in my face, you're still asking me to do something. All right, I'm going to do something because I'm really getting angry now.
Absolutely.
And it may not be it's nasty, it might just be fed up or even a bit nervous maybe.
Absolutely.
And I just find it very interesting that a lot of people automatically jump on that it's demonic, it's this, it's that, when it could just be in a very bad mood.
Right. And, people love to be scared. The adrenaline, that they get from that, the sense of adventure and adrenaline and just the unknown, I think people are really intrigued by that. As am I, my group and I, we travel all over and go to these, places and do the same thing that our tour groups are doing, when they come and see us. So, but I can't quite understand though. I have, again, physically have seen these marks appear on people. And then of course, everybody their first thought is, oh, it's demonic. The demons are here. The devil is here. And yeah, that's a little extreme.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's kind of how I feel about it. Especially when you say to someone, look, if you were going to scratch someone, you wouldn't scratch with all four fingers. You probably would scratch with your first three because they're the longer fingers.
Sure.
So they're the ones that connect first. It doesn't mean it's the mark of the Trinity.
The mark of the Trinity.
Yeah. It just means that's where your hand naturally... And I've done it to someone. I've scratched them and said, look, how many scratches? 3. Oh,
right.
It's an interesting one to sort of... And it's one that people have very polarized views on. That they either think it's going to be demonic, it's got to be demonic. Right.
Yeah, it's, there's a room in the basement. We call it the cell. It actually used to be a cell. And from what we understand, there were possibly bars that were located in this little room. And, just stories that we've heard. Again, this is just stories. This is not proven fact. That possibly there may have been men or people that have been held in that little cell, because that little cell tends to be one of the most active as far as any physical things happening to people. Of course, there are other areas of the bar where that happens, but that tends to be like the main focus. It's very, very interesting, and I don't know, in your research, I'm sure you probably came across the building was actually an upscale dinner club and casino.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to get onto that in a sec, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So, there's a lot of history.
That's what I was going to link that cell into, actually, because the building itself, I mean, it's not... Well, it is a kind of a surprise to me because I don't think of... When I'm thinking of mafia and gangsters, I think of places like Chicago or New York.
Right.
I didn't think of Cincinnati and Kentucky, if I'm completely honest. And because Cincinnati's called to the other side of the river, almost.
Yes.
Wilder in Kentucky, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And when I started doing the research into this, so the club itself, when it was first built, it was built as a roadhouse. And then it became a speakeasy during the Prohibition. For anyone who doesn't know, the speakeasies were basically unlicensed drinking bars, I suppose.
Right.
Is an easy way to call them, because you had to speak easy, meant speak quietly, so nobody knew you were there.
Yes.
And then it became something called the Primrose, and it was run by a chap called Buck Brady. Now, it was quite successful, I understand, when Buck had it.
Very successful.
And a group of Cincinnati gangsters known as the Cleveland Syndicate.
Yes.
Also known, the guys who actually kind of ran it were known as the Mayfield Road Gang. They wanted it. And I'm probably I'm summarising this quite a bit, and Buck wouldn't sell.
Sure.
And he held out and held out and held out. And I believe he tried to kill one of them, didn't he? Red Masterson.
Yes.
I'm just checking my notes here. Yeah, Red Masterson. He did actually try and kill him, unsuccessfully.
Correct. They had a little shootout in the streets of Newport that was nearby. Yes.
Yeah. But it was shortly after that the syndicate came to a deal with him and said, basically, if you sell it to us, we'll forget about the fact you tried to kill Red.
Right.
Is that a good way of
it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so Buck decided, yeah, sod it, I'm going to get rid of it. It's nothing more than trouble. And I think that was in I've got my dates here, 1949. He
sounds about right.
Sold it to them, because I think the shooting was in 46.
Yes.
So in 49 he sold it, but he cursed the property, which is quite interesting. And he said, you will never have this as a casino. This will never function happily as a casino. Now, the gangsters took it over and renamed it the Latin Quarter. And I believe was it run by a chap called Sam or Sol Gutterman? Was he the...
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Now, he ran it for them. And they were raided quite a few times.
They were.
Because what's really interesting, and this is how nerdy I get when I'm doing my research, I actually found the accounts from, and I don't know if I had to pronounce this, the Kefava Committee from the 1950s, who were looking at stopping illegal gambling in interstate communities. And reading their court transcripts and their meeting reports and everything is fascinating. It takes up a lot of your time. You don't realise you've been reading them for 3 hours until, the kids start going, Mum, can we have some dinner now? And it's like, oh, shit, sorry. But it's actually mentioned in those reports, which is absolutely fascinating. But the main names that were associated with it was Mo Dalit, who was very well known with the big name gangsters. People like Bugsy Siegel, Joe Adonis, and he actually killed himself a year after his wife died from gunshot wounds in 1956. You had Morris Kleinman, Sam Tucker, and Louis Rothkopf. But the interesting thing is, they were all Jewish.
Right.
It was a Jewish gang.
It's very odd, yes. Yeah, very unique.
Very, very. And I found that quite amazing, because you'd think of Italian or something. But no, they were Jewish.
Yeah. And what's pretty interesting also, when you had mentioned Cleveland Syndicate, there is a nightclub, dinner club in Newport that is rumored to be owned by the same family and is called the Syndicate. Yeah. So that kind of gives you an idea of, maybe are things still going on? I
think they are, because I think I want to say it was Kleinman. It was one of the guys that I found. He still has a lot of pull in Las Vegas.
Absolutely.
And things like that. So, they still have their fingers in pies. And I did actually find the names of some of the other clubs and casinos that they owned at the same sort of time in the whole sort of Kentucky region. So you can imagine what sort of, you know, the atmosphere it would have been as in effect an illegal casino run by mobsters.
Right. Yeah.
And there would have been some very dubious deals going on.
Absolutely. You know, they're a group that does not handle things very civilly. From you know, if we look at, you know, Hollywood's portrayal, they don't handle things very civilly and can be quite violent. So there's the history in that building is. We'll never know. We'll never know exactly some of the things that's happened in that building.
But it's when you mentioned the cell, that's what I was thinking of with these guys, because there would have been. I mean, it's in quite a sort of. It's not a very built-up area, is it? That the building is in. And it probably would have been easy to take someone who you wanted to get answers from,
right,
and lock them up in there and torture them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which, and you know, a lot of people will ask, well, if it's not demonic, then why do you think there's activity there? Well, you know, everybody is so fascinated with the Pearl Bryan stories, and even the Johanna stories, which was the young lady.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, don't mean to jump ahead of you.
That's all right. It's like you're reading my notes, Angela.
It's these activities, these things that possibly or probably could have happened, I think, have created, you know, that volatile environment and opened up a portal of some sort, you know. It's just not just about the Pearl Bryan and the slaughterhouse. There's a lot more to this building, and you've done your homework quite a bit. So I'm very very pleased with your homework. So
thank you. Thanks, boss. Yes, I like to do my homework into things because I think it makes it a lot more interesting rather than just talking about the myths and assuming that they must have happened rather than, well, really, Pearl Bryan? I mean, the thing is with the whole Pearl Bryan thing, Pearl was a common name. If anyone gets Pearl coming through on a spirit box or a novelist or any kind of word, it wouldn't be an unusual name. And I mean, there is a song called Pearl's a Singer. So Pearl could have been a singer, she could have been a barmaid, she could have been one of the women who were expected to frequent there, without going into too much detail. They weren't saloon girls, but you know what I mean. It could have been there was a Pearl there. That's very, very plausible. But
sure.
No, I think going into the you can actually look at the history of the place to get some really interesting potential. You don't need to look at the myths.
Now, Pearl Bryan, she really was a real person.
Oh yes, very much so.
So a lot of people, you know, they will ask that once we tell them, you know, we don't think there was ever a Pearl here. So then they'll ask, well, was the stories of Pearl true? The stories of Pearl are true.
Yes.
The stories that they tell you on the paranormal shows do not go into the true detail of the stories. Her story is really very quite tragic and very sad.
It's awful. It's awful. And I've been reading up a lot of the newspaper articles from 1895 and 1896 mainly, you know, going through the trials of the two guys, Walling and Jackson, and all the variations they said on what had actually happened. And all this. This poor girl was a young girl, somewhat naive, gets herself pregnant, thinks a man's going to marry her, and doesn't realise that she's actually he's going to force her to have an abortion, and dies.
Being taken to,
and, starts to bleed out, and basically gets murdered as a result. And then gets decapitated so nobody can identify her. And the amazing thing is she was identified because of her shoes.
Right,
because her
absolutely.
shoes were handmade, and they'd only made 2 pairs. This manufacturer had only made 2 pairs in this size, and one of them had been sold to Pearl, and Pearl was missing. So her story is absolutely tragic. There's a lot more to it than that. I mean,
it's
a lot more to it than that.
Yes.
It's a show in its own right, to be quite honest, talking about what happened to poor Pearl. But
Right.
the other link that you just mentioned, and this links in with the gangster era, is the Johanna Jules, the nightclub
Yes.
singer, who was supposedly the daughter of the owner. Now, I looked into the 4 owners, Sam, Morris, Mo and Louis. Couldn't find any daughters for them. Sam Gutterman, possibly he could have had, but I couldn't find confirmation that he had a daughter. Excuse me. But she's meant to have fallen in love with someone. Was it Robert Randall?
Robert Randall.
Yeah, was meant
Yes.
to be his name. And her father, because he's kind of a gangster, got Robert killed because he didn't approve. And so she killed herself, and I think they found out she was pregnant after she'd killed herself.
Correct.
Is that about right?
Yeah. It sounds about right. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Oh, sorry about that. So, what's your take on the Joanna story?
So again, in our research, we have not found anything to prove Johanna's existence. The only thing that we have found, and again, it's totally, we cannot prove that it's related at all. There is no link. But we were able to find a death certificate for a Johanna. The last name skips
Reagan?
my memory right now.
Reagan.
It could be
something like that.
Something like that, yeah. And the date kind of escapes my memory, but it
1914.
does. Yes, yeah. So much earlier.
Yes,
than
suicide nearby.
Right. Yes, and interesting that it does state that her manner of death was suicide by poisoning, but again, we have no way to link that to the nightclub casino days. There's just no link. The timeline just does not match up.
No.
I think if I remember correctly, maybe in our research, there was some kind of an indication that her husband, she was married and maybe had a 2-year-old child, and her husband was a Cincinnati fireman. And she may have been, again, this is kind of speculation and kind of putting links together that maybe she was moonlighting as a lady of the night, possibly. But again, no link, direct link to the building, to the nightclub, dinner club days.
No, I couldn't find. I mean, I found exactly the same information that you're talking about Joanna Ray, and it was unusual the fact the name was spelt correct the same way, and again, it was a death by suicide, so and very close by to where the club was. But as you say, the dates don't quite add up.
Right.
And the fact that no one can find any trace of any of the owners who were the listed owners, what we now know as the owners, having had, I mean, I know that, I think it was Kleinman has a daughter because she's a writer, but she's very much still alive.
Yes.
And there's no mention that she lost a sister back in the 1960s. So I just wonder if that was another one of those urban myths that sort of maybe it was told many years ago that this Joanna, she got pregnant and she killed herself because it wasn't her husband's baby. Right. And the story's just got, and it could even have been the mobsters themselves that spread the story.
Sure.
To scare people.
Like,
propaganda.
Right. Yeah.
But you're saying that part of the bar is actually quite, the main part of the bar, I think you said, or upstairs, is quite active. Yes,
it is, yes. We have a section of the bar, we call it the bull room. It's where the mechanical bull is. And there is a corner of that room that we refer to as the creepy corner, just because it's so very creepy and eerie. And we've had
I'm not laughing at you. I like the names.
It's just, it's all fun. But I've had so many personal things happen, in this corner, as well as, many of our guests. People have taken our tours, and then our group members have things happen. I had a Catholic priest that did a tour with me a couple of years ago and became so ill in this corner, and lights were flickering when the electricity was turned off to the building at the time. Wow. It was it's just bizarre, some of the things that happen in that corner. You just feel the eyes watching you. You can feel something is always watching you. It's just bizarre, very eerie. EVPs that we've had, coming from that corner. And that's, not the only area of the bar upstairs that's active. We get a lot of activity coming from the stage and behind the stage area. A lot of activity back there. We can hear conversations, what sounds like men having conversations. You can hear the deep tone of men's voices. You can hear footsteps, things moving around back there, and the shadows that are coming in and out of the doorways, leading to the backstage area. It's fascinating to watch. Yeah. But at the same time, it's very eerie to you get that feeling that you're being watched.
So do we know if there was a stage there during its mafia?
It was, yes. Yes. We have pictures of what the inside of the building looked like during that time period. And so, yes, there was a stage there. Okay. And, can you tell me what's been in some of the EVPs that you've picked up? We pick up a lot of women's voices. We do hear quite often what sounds like a female humming or singing. Mm-hmm. Some of the EVPs that we hear, like one in particular, sounds like Carl. Carl Lawson was the old caretaker of the building. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We hear these voices, these EVPs that sound like Carl. The Catholic priest that I had just mentioned earlier, he actually got an EVP of what sounds like Carl upstairs in the old apartment. And you can plainly hear this voice say, "Yes, I am still here." It's just so eerie to hear. Carl's been gone for almost 7 years now. Yeah. And his story is, a little bizarre as well, but yeah.
Because I know. So Ghost Adventures first went there. He was still alive, I believe, and he was on the telling them his stories. When they went back, I think he'd passed away, and Correct. They picked up an EVP with what they swore was his voice. Yes, and like I said, Nick has been back several times since, although they claimed they would never return. Because, Bobb Mackeys was supposedly the root of all of their, their personal problems and, some bad things that happened to them in their personal life. But Nick, he has been back twice. But yes, he has gotten EVPs of a voice that he swears is Carl. The thing is with Carl, he was very attached to the place, wasn't he? The place almost became him, and he became...
Very much so.
The place.
Yeah. Yes. He lived there from, I think, like 13 to 15 years upstairs in this little apartment. And if you've never been there, to go into this apartment now, you would think someone lived here. Right. It's not in livable condition now, but it's quite small. But yes, he lived there for 13 to 15 years. And, the Bobby and the employees of the bar, they were his family. That is all he had. And so his existence was basically based around that bar.
So I know when I saw him on the early Ghost Adventures, he did seem, I think he said something about that the spirits were his friends as well, like the resident spirits of the place. A lot of them were his. He knew them well. It was
Interesting.
it was a. I can kind of get that. I mean, it's funny because the book I'm writing at the moment, I'm just writing a chapter about this fort in the UK, and anyone I know who has spent quite a bit of time at this fort, they become very, very involved with it, and they almost feel a wrench to have to leave it.
Yeah.
And so I can understand that kind of
Right.
becoming at one with the building almost.
You know, and that's very interesting because being a tour guide and some of the other group members, my group members, they will even say the same thing. As much as we feel apprehensive about being there, we're drawn back to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like we can't stay away, although we it's just, it's very bizarre. But yeah, we're drawn to it, and we're very protective of the building. Quite honestly, you know, we will defend it, you know, until we can no longer defend it. So it's very unique, has a unique atmosphere, but it has its moments where it can be very volatile, and I've actually experienced that myself. So
that was going to be my next question. What have you experienced that's frightened you then?
So a lot of people will ask, have you ever had any type of an attachment? Or a lot of people like to use the term possessed. Have you ever been possessed? No, I have never been possessed. For years, as long as we've been doing this, I've never felt that I've had any type of attachments. I've never had anything physically hurt me inside that building. I've had things thrown at me. I've heard some pretty angry growls and some pretty angry voices I've heard, but nothing has ever physically harmed me. However, very recently, I have felt, and this is, I know this just sounds so cliche, but I feel that I have actually have taken something home with me. I have some sort of an attachment now. And this has happened within the past couple of months. And to the point that I have had physical, some sort of physical contact with whatever it is in my home, not at Bobb Mackeys, but in my home. And I feel like I have taken it. It has originated from the building. Whatever it is has followed me home from there.
You've got a hitchhiker, basically.
I think so. Now, I don't, no way do I think it's demonic. I don't think there's nothing evil there. I just think it's a spirit that's probably interested, for some reason, has formed a bond, an attachment. It's very hard to describe, but it lets me know quite often that it's near, that it's around, not only in my home, but if I travel for business, it's there. And I know this sounds so far-fetched and so crazy, but it's, for years, a lot of people have always asked me this, and I've always kind of brushed it off and thought, nah, that's, I don't believe in that stuff. But the past couple of months, some of the events that have happened has really changed my mind.
Yeah. For the record, I don't believe in possession. I don't believe you can be negatively, have something negatively attach itself to you. I don't believe that. I do believe in what I've called it a hitchhiker, because the reason I believe it is possible is these entities, they're intelligent. They are the same as they would have been in life, albeit without that physical body.
Right.
So you meet people in life who take a instant shine to you and want to be around you. They want to be talking to you on social media. They want to catch you on the phone. They want to go out for a beer with you. Why would a spirit not be the same?
Right.
And it could be that this spirit has seen you and seen you and seen you at Bobb Mackeys and just because I think, I really like her. She's got a really nice way about her, or she looks like she's a really nice person. So I'd like to get to know her a bit better. I don't think there's any reason why they wouldn't, because it's what, so, all right, a human wouldn't follow you to your home and everything else.
Absolutely.
But
yes,
it's, to me, it's perfectly plausible. But the thing is, the minute you start saying to someone, I've got something following me around, they will automatically assume it's evil. They will automatically assume it wants to do you harm. And most of the time, I've brought a few home with me on things I've done.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a shadow in the back seat of my car before on the way home from somewhere, and I'm just like, no, you've got to go back. I can't take you home with me. I'm sorry.
Sure. Right.
But it does happen, and so no, I don't think it sounds weird or anything at all. I think it's probably, as I said, a nervous spirit who has taken their time to sort of feel comfortable with you, and now said, I'd like to see you away from here.
Right.
Do you ever get a sense of whether it's male, female, anything like that?
Not yet. I'm not quite sure yet. There have been times that when it's appeared, it actually, it seems maybe childlike, maybe adolescent, not quite like a full adult form, or not like a small child, but just, adolescent in between.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And some people, they'll also ask, well, if all of these stories are just urban legend and they're not true, then why would Bobb Mackeys be haunted? Why do you think there's something there? And you know what? I ask myself this all the time, but I honestly, in my opinion, I think there is activity in this building because people who come to visit the building are doing they're doing rituals and seances, and they're communicating and opening up these portals. They're opening up these lines of communication, not realizing you're opening these, but you're leaving them open.
Yes.
They're not closed. And so now many different spirits can come and go.
Yes.
I think that's why there's activity.
Very probably. It could also be that, one of the theories I was reading, it was to do with the river.
Yes.
Providing almost like a conduit. And the
right.
reason I was laughing when you said, well, if these myths and legends aren't true, why would it still be haunted? I got asked that question recently in a place that's only sort of 40, 50 years old and has quite a lot of activity. And somebody said, well, nobody's died here. Nobody.
Right.
It's not old. Why is it haunted? And it's like, well, firstly, a place doesn't have to be old to be haunted. It doesn't. Also, you don't know what that place was built on and what the ground has held within it beforehand. And as I said, you don't know what's been brought in, as you just basically said. You don't know what's been opened up. You don't know who's done what. And it's a bit like the whole satanic rituals thing in the basements.
Yes.
Was there a Satanist club there back in Pearl's day? Or is it the fact the rumours that there was meant people thought, that would be a good place to do a ritual? A chicken and egg sort of situation, what came first? So I say to people, everywhere's got the propensity to be haunted. Don't look at a place and say, that can't be haunted. It could be. It could be. And then when you look at the history of the place, the fact there were fatal shootings there in the 1970s when it was known as the Hard Rock Cafe before Bobb Mackeys opened. The fact people will have died there, the fact there would have been, during the time when it was the Latin Quarter, the fact that when it was the Primrose with Buck Brady, I guarantee some things went on there that probably shouldn't have done.
Absolutely. Most definitely.
And one of the things with hauntings is people, and this is a real bugbear of mine, people automatically assume that the haunting has to be the famous person who's listed in the newspaper.
Mm-hmm. Right.
In my experience, 9 times out of 10, it's the nobody that nobody's ever heard of.
Exactly. And which is why I think, I honestly, I've never had or have never heard an EVP that specifically mentions Pearl, Johanna, Buck Brady, Red Masterson, or anybody that has remotely been tied, into this building. I have never heard one single one of those names.
In 5 years of investigating the place?
No. It's always just a random name.
that's
yeah,
plausible. That is still plausible. It could have been to do with the building.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's possible. Just as someone that does not have that, has never had that publicity that we just,
stuff.
yeah. Could be the maid.
Yeah.
Could be the barmaid. It could be, it just, you never know. But yeah, there's
the barman who was working there at that point in time.
Absolutely. Yeah. But there's definitely something there. It's very unique. But there are times it is very quiet. And a lot of when our groups come, they automatically they feel like they should automatically see demons rising out of the floors and objects being thrown through the air and furniture levitating. They feel like they should see this because, of course, these paranormal shows have kind of hyped it up to that point. And I always explain to them, although you're not seeing and hearing things with your own eyes and ears, if you're recording, you are probably going to get some really, really good EVPs. So I let my groups know up front, what you see or hear is what you get. If you don't see it or hear it, I'm sorry, I can't make them come out and perform. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't put a dime in the machine and the monkey starts clapping. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. But I make it to where I encourage them to participate if they really want to have that experience. They're there obviously because they want to experience something, and so I encourage them if they're comfortable. Let's do some EVP sessions. Let's see if we can get some responses. If we don't be disappointed. I don't want you to feel disappointed if we don't hear anything, but just keep an open mind. And again, what you see or hear is what you get.
So would you say that the place loves you as much as you love it?
Probably not.
No?
Probably not. No. Of course, I think my hitchhiker, if you kind of named him, I think maybe the hitchhiker might like me a little bit, but I don't really. It's very quiet for me most nights, but again, there are times that it gets very active for other people.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? It's so. I have not experienced that full body apparition.
Right.
I've seen some really odd things through the years, but I've never experienced that full bodied apparition. I've never had that physical thing where I felt threatened or nothing like that has happened to me. However, I've bore witness to that happening to other people.
Right. Well, I'd say that it does care about you then, because it's not hurt you.
No, that could be true. Yeah.
So what advice...
I try to be respectful.
Yeah, that's probably why, though. What advice would you give to anyone visiting Bobb Mackeys?
Keep an open mind. If you want to provoke, we don't encourage it. We don't discourage it. Just please be aware of what the possibilities are as far as you can get an attachment. It can happen. I don't think anything there is going to harm you. It's not demonic by any means, but just keep an open mind. That what you're doing, you're opening that line of communication, and sometimes that can't be closed, and so that leaves you kind of exposed and vulnerable. So just beware.
Okay, well that's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll put the Gatekeeper Paranormal link on the Parasearch page, so if anyone wants to follow it, they can follow that. But thanks ever so much to Angela for stepping in.
My pleasure.
My
Yes.
of a guest at the last minute.
Well, I don't know about that.
Oh, you are. It's been a fascinating conversation. It's interesting to talk to people who have done repeat visits to a place rather than just once or twice, because when you do repeat visits, you do start to get to know the creaking and the groaning and everything of a place, rather than assuming every single noise is
Yes.
paranormal. So it's always interesting. And no, thank you ever so much, and I really appreciate
My
that.
pleasure. My
I hope you have
pleasure. It's been a
great
pleasure.
Tour. I hope you have a great tour later tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you to Angela for her time tonight talking about Bobb Mackeys. It definitely sounds like somewhere to go and check out, even just for the history side of it, if nothing else. But that's me for tonight. That's Haunted Histories all done and dusted for another week. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to let us know what you thought. If there's any shows you'd like us to do, any places you'd like us to cover. I apologise for the croaking and the coughing that you've been hearing all the way through, but I'm a trooper. I carried on through man flu. That's how dedicated I am to bringing you all the haunted histories. But Parasearch Radio shows on 5 nights of the week and even 6 nights on occasion, and we'll have some new shows coming to you soon in the new year. But on that note, until next week, my friends, have a good evening, sleep tight, and don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.